Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. I am your host, Keith Cummings, joined today by my good friend, Jacob Gibbs. And get excited, it is Puka Nacua Day. You can see the smile on Jacob's face. No one's more excited about this than he is.
Yeah, man, so good to beat Puka Nacua Day. Like, wow, I was really excited about him all offseason, obviously, and now we're actually here. It's still a little surreal.
I've had a number of tweets that have come in before I even mentioned that that's like going to be kind of the highlight of what we talk about. And we'll get to it in just a minute. Of course, we've got the big Nick Chubb news. That's what we'll talk about first. We've got some deep waiver wire ads for you a little later in the show. We'll talk about some dynasty risers and fallers and
like the
a
worst
couple of
I've
wide
ever
receiver
seen.
duos on the same team that I have ranked very close to each other and kind of struggle with who I prefer. We'll get Jacob's that. But first, we have to start with the bad news. An absolutely gruesome injury to Nick Chubb last night. Obviously, first, we hope he's okay, and hopefully he recovers and we get to see him play football. He's been arguably the best runner in the NFL since he entered the league.
About Nana Joe.
And now, turning 28, another month or two, season-ending, some sort of surgery coming, Jacob. I guess let's start with the angle of that like people might be actionable. What do you think this backfield looks like without Chubb?
It was pretty much all Jerome Ford on Monday night, and I think that they really like Jerome Ford. All summer they had the opportunity to go get someone else. They let Kareem walk, Kareem Hunt. There were plenty of running backs they could have signed, and Jerome Ford was injured leading up all through preseason and everything, and they didn't. The only acquisition they made was going and getting Pierre Strong for really cheap. And I think that they're pretty committed to him, and so I'm pretty excited about him. I liked him as a prospect. I think he profiles pretty strongly, and obviously we saw the big play potential last night. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to wait to see if they sign somebody.
Right. I did see some suggestions they might be in the Cam Akers market.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have much reason to think Cam Akers is better than Jerome Ford right now. I've seen a lot of people speculating on Kareem Hunt, obviously, but they already chose Jerome Ford over Kareem Hunt once this season. So I am more working under the assumption that it might be like a 60-30, maybe like what it's been with Chubb and Hunt in the past, with Ford in that Chubb role, except maybe catching more passes. Probably a borderline number 2. Listen, we've had a lot of backup running backs who have disappointed us already in the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. So there's some concern there, but do you view Ford more as someone who might get this job and then become a starting running back for a 3 or 4 year stretch, or do you think this is he's like a patchwork guy for 2023?
Probably a patchwork guy. He doesn't necessarily profile as a 3-down guy. He's a 5th round pick. So he's exciting. He's got the opportunity here. I do think he's got some juice, but yeah, I wouldn't go overboard with it.
So when J.K. Dobbins tore his Achilles, I guess it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago, somebody had him on their roster, and they basically sent out a blast. They were tilting. He said, first person to offer me a 4th round pick for J.K. Dobbins, you can have him. And so I sent a 4th round pick. Put him on the IR. We'll see if he's able to play football again. But Chubb, he's been healthy except for that injury in college. Now, this is a pretty major knee injury. Like I said, he'll turn 28 before this year turns to 2024. Do you have any hope on, like, this is the kind of guy, and I tweeted about it earlier, said I had stashed Jerome Ford just for this moment. I am tanking this year. Somebody offered, I put him on the block as soon as this happened last night. Somebody offered me Nick Chubb for him in a dynasty league. I don't know that I want to take that.
That's really interesting. I think I prefer the long-term outlook for Chubb still. It's tough. We don't know exactly what he's going to be when he gets back, but I don't think Nick Chubb is somebody whose ability is necessarily predicated on his athleticism. I think he could still be a really good running back even if he doesn't have quite as much juice. I think fundamentally he's one of the best running backs we've ever seen. I want to believe. That is really interesting comparing the two.
Yeah, well, yeah, because like obviously if you're factoring in this year, Ford gets a big boost from the fact that you could actually use him. But just looking at it from next year forward, I just don't know. I think the other thing is, like, obviously that relationship with Chubb and the Browns seems pretty special, and so I would assume they will get it worked out. But I believe he has a $4 million dead cap hit after this year, and he has like a $15 million contract next year. So he's going to be in that Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook conversation next off season of does he take the pay cut to stay on the Browns because they're not paying him what his current contract would call for him.
Yeah, and for everything I just said about him as a player, like, it's really hard for aging running backs to remain relevant if they don't catch passes and stay on the field on passing downs. Yeah.
Any interest, we'll talk about some deeper waiver wire guys, and Pierre Strong's on that list. Any interest in adding Strong this week in Dynasty Leagues? Just not, obviously you're not putting a big fab bid out there, but is he a guy you want to have on the roster in case something happens to Ford now?
Yeah, similarly to Ford, Strong was somebody that I had been stashing. You know, you like to stash these backup running backs that could be something, and then he got traded. We actually had a couple dynasty teams with both of them, and he got traded to Cleveland, and I ended up dropping him in a few spots to clear space, which is frustrating now. I think he's worth an ad for sure. I think we could see him working more as he gets more familiar with the system.
We will put him on the list. Now, that was not the happiest way, obviously, to start the show, but it's Puka Nacua time, and Thomas has a nice transition here for us.
He had the highest yard per route run rate of any player in this class. In fact, among players who qualified, who have at least 500 routes run in their career, his yard per route run rate is higher than anyone other than Jalen Waddle among receivers taken in the first 5 rounds over the last 5 years. So higher than T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, C.D. Lamb, Puka Nacua. So maybe a name to know, because the Rams really, I mean, after Cooper Kupp, we really have no idea who's going to get the targets. Nice tanked up.
That was from May on Fantasy Football Today. I have show notes, and I didn't go back and pull the show. On this show, Fantasy Football Today Dynasty, we were talking in June with Dwayne McFarland about Puka Nacua and being a dynasty buy and go get him. So this is a guy that you've been talking about basically since the draft. He's been talked about a lot on this show, and I love this time of year because it's the time you can legitimately take a side here. What he's done in the first 2 weeks of the season, earning 30 targets and second in the NFL in receiving yards, even you didn't think that was going to happen, even if Cooper Kupp was out. But now we've got this strange thing, and I posted a dynasty poll this morning: Puka Nacua, Jahan Dotson, or Christian Watson. Puka's got about 50% of the vote, just mopping the floor with those guys. I don't know how really to rank this guy, and so you're going to help me with that. I've got 3 questions. We always do the 3 questions for Jacob Gibbs, 3 questions for Chris Dowers. We've got 3 questions about Puka Nacua, and these are kind of the 3 things that go into my dynasty rankings. And then I'm going to tell you when we're done where I had them, and you tell me if I'm crazy. Rest of season projections for Puka Nacua, and give me. And you don't have to give me like a number. Where is he wide receiver wise? If Cooper Kupp comes back week 5 and everything's fine,
perfect.
Or if Cooper Kupp doesn't ever really become Cooper Kupp again this year.
If Kupp doesn't come back and isn't fine, I think Nacua is legitimately like top 20 fantasy receiver. Is totally realistic. I've got him at wide receiver 15 this week. He can fill so many roles, and he's clearly the guy. Like, and the role that he's getting with the first 3 targets and everything else, the percentage of everything he's getting, he's counted for 45% of the receiving yards while he's been on the field. It's just absurd. Like, that's wide receiver 1 stuff. If when Kupp is back, Dan and I have talked about this quite a bit. Dan Schneier on Beyond the Box Score. I still think he can play a really relevant role. Like, he's somebody we saw used in a lot of different ways creatively in college. He can be used as a rusher. The Rams have gotten him involved that way a little bit so far. He can work down the field in the intermediary, and then, like we saw last week, he can do kind of the Cooper Kupp stuff and really just kill zones. So I think he's going to be the starting flanker when Kupp is back and still be pretty involved.
So you think wide receiver, you said top 20 without Kupp, 36-ish with Kupp?
I think that's about right, yeah. I mean, like, that is contingent on the Rams continuing to look good offensively, Stafford continuing to be healthy. Like, if everything's functioning well and comes back, I think
Doesn't
he's
that
still
sound
pretty
like
relevant.
Ryan Ellis?
Okay, so I've got a number that I assign for a player's long-term dynasty
Thought it did.
upside. Not completely tethered to this year. It's just like in the next 3 years, what's this guy's reasonable upside? Let's say 80th percentile.
Okay.
You don't have to give me a number if you don't know what my scale is, but give me a few guys who you think Nakua's upside matches up pretty well to over the next 3 years. Like, things go right.
Right. Baton Reed is somebody who and we're definitely going to talk about today. I think that they're comparable. I want to think of some guys who aren't rookies.
Yeah, not rookies
necessarily. Right, yeah. I think maybe Elijah Moore is a decent comparison. Somebody like that can fill a lot of different roles and has shown some encouraging data points so far, but it's a small sample size. John Dotson. Honestly, I think the results in that poll that you posted are absolutely absurd, and I'm about as big of a Puka Nacua truther as you'll find. But people are so quick to just like give up on Jahan Dotson, and it's like, this guy is really, really good. He's not in a situation that's necessarily very conducive to fantasy success right now, but don't sleep on Jahan Dotson. We had Matt Harmon on Beyond the Box Score this summer. He's another guy who likes Puka Nacua as well, and he just is enamored with Jahan Dotson and what he's seen from him. He's just so good at evaluating wide receivers and finding Brandon Ayuk is the latest guy.
I don't know. He's not
absolutely
home.
broken out, and is much better than people realize and has been for years.
Or maybe he went to the Lions game.
I would rather have
the Lions game's not until Sunday.
What about Christian Watson? Because he was the other guy in the poll.
Watson's who I voted for. I think the upside for Watson is like way higher than anything you're getting from Nacua, and I love Nacua, but yeah.
It's really hard for me, and this is, I think, a good talking point right now. Like, I think there's people out there that see a rookie gets 30 targets in his first 2 NFL games, and hears this player has a lot more upside. And they're like,
maybe he's at
possible?
The park.
How can you have, like,
Maybe.
that's the thing, is like, we're talking about reasonable upside, not 99% outcomes for all these guys, but, and this obviously has been what Nacua so far, maybe even, we didn't even think it was on the charge, but, like, it's trying to figure out what his upside is based on this type of starts.
The framework of the offensive environment that he's operating within right now is literally, like, perfect for just producing target volume. Like, the Rams have had a ton of plays. Matthew Stafford feeds his wide receiver one. We've seen this with so many different guys. Look what happened to Kenny Galladay as soon as he got not attached to Matthew Stafford, and just in terms of volume. Like, I love Nacua, but yeah, I don't think we should go overboard with it here. I think Michael Pittman is maybe another good comparison from a profile standpoint. Like, somebody who within the right system can be a fantasy wide receiver one and is legitimately a good player, used in a lot of different ways, but I don't think has the upside to push into like the top 10, top 12.
And then, do you think he's helped his floor case at all in his first 2 weeks, or do you still think there's a pretty low floor over the next 3 years for Nacua?
I think the only reason to be concerned about the floor is, one, we haven't been able to see him stay healthy at any point and like actually put together a full season even at the college level, and then two, it's just a small sample size. But those are both, just things you have to bake in terms of risk. In terms of what we've seen from him as a player and the role that he fills, I think there's really no floor concerns.
I lied. I said 3 questions, but we're gonna keep going on Puka Nacua, because it does kind of sound like you're open to the idea that the best course of action, based on everybody else's value of him in reaction to the last 2 weeks, is to sell Puka at Dynasty.
I am in some places. I don't think you want to like go out of your way to sell him, but I think it's reasonable to hear people out if people come looking to trade for him. Like, absolutely, I would engage in that. 2024 first? I don't think so, unless it's a pick you think has a chance to turn to Marvin Harrison or something. Because, like, yeah, if Puka Nacua is as good as Christian Watson or Jahan Dotson, like, I think that's more valuable than that at first.
Right. Well, I think that's the interesting thing, is comparing him not just to the wide receivers in this class, but the wide receivers to the last class. I'm just going to ask you one more, because I know you're not quite as high on the put him in the Jahan Dotson, Christian Watson conversation. So what if the poll was a little different? I know I didn't do this poll on Twitter because Puka would win 90%. but if it was George Pickens, Puka Nacua, and Quentin Johnston.
That would be Nacua for me. I've got pretty serious concerns with both of those guys, although it was really exciting when we saw Pickens last night.
Right, we're going to talk about that more, and you mentioned the first read looks for Pickens. You don't have that information yet. We'll have that tomorrow, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be noticeably different. The thing I hesitate with Pickens is how much do we value that spike in first read target share when the number one is gone?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a grain of salt you have to take with everything we saw last night, but the big point is that he did it at all. We literally haven't seen him be able to do that, and we haven't, but like so much of that I think you can assign to the role that he's playing in Pittsburgh. He ran a go route 39% of the time, the next highest was 30%. Over 50% of his routes were go, corner, or post routes. You just don't get targets on those routes. Those routes, the average target per route run rate is 12%. That's so low. It's just been an impossible role for him to win in and to draw targets in, and so like if we see him used as a wide receiver one, that obviously is the upside that's within his player profile, and he's not just Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
I'm glad that he's not just Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I do think he is still Gabe Davis with the worst quarterback, but we'll find out more about that moving forward with Deontay Johnson now on the IR. We're going to get at least 3 more weeks of George Pickens as we would expect to be this team's wide receiver one. Another piece of news here before we just jump into the waiver wire. David Montgomery, I guess it's not technically news, but he basically came out and said that he thought he needed 2 to 3 weeks to let his quad thigh bruise heal. They've already added Bam Knight off the practice squad. So it's Jahmyr Gibbs, it's Craig Reynolds, it's Bam Knight. Do you think that we're going to see Jahmyr Gibbs actually play like lead running back here, or do you think who has more carries in the next 2 games, Craig Reynolds plus Bam Knight or Jahmyr Gibbs?
Reynolds and Bam Knight. I hate it. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's the answer.
I think this is opening the door. If we get an underwhelming Jahmyr Gibbs performance in week 3, to really go by lower than where he was. I think if like with Montgomery being out of the picture, if it's a single-digit carry game from Gibbs, and maybe he doesn't have quite as many forced targets as he had last week, I do think that we're going to see just a little bit of panic creeping in.
Yeah, no, I think that is a really good point. I brought him up as a buy. This wasn't specific to Dynasty, but after week 2, just because of that very thing, we saw him kind of fill in, but not really fill the full role, and not do particularly well in week 2. And so that is in people's minds. And then if we see this similar thing in week 3, I think people might panic, because he's so small that there is a potential that he's like CJ Spiller or something. Right. If you get somebody worrying about that, I think that's interesting.
It would be something if the Lions took C.J. Spiller at 12th overall. With the way that team is set up for success and the way that division looks like it could be theirs for the taking this year, that would be that'd be something. We're going to take a short break, then we're going to get to the waiver wire, and maybe we'll be adding Craig Reynolds. Okay, so we'll talk about this. So the feedback I got from last week was mostly that we were in just about the right range. So what we're going to try to do, Jacob, with these waiver wire guys is look for guys who are rostered in less than 10% of leagues. We will tell you if somebody's in 25, 30% of leagues because we think that they should be 100%. And obviously Jerome Ford is that guy this week, 27% rostered in CBS leagues. Probably rostered in most 12-team dynasty leagues, probably not in a lot of 10-team dynasty leagues. If you see him on your waiver wire and you're not used to finding starter production, is this a guy, if you're a contender, that's worth just 90% of the fab?
I think so, no.
A much better situation than what we've seen the last couple of weeks from like what Joshua Kelly just gave us, right?
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to McDonald's. Will you be using your... Hi, how can I help you?
Can I get a double quarter pounder with cheese with just ketchup and onion? And a large Coke.
Anything else?
That's it.
$17.19.
$7.19.
7:19. I think they're gonna make us pull up, I believe.
Yeah, probably. So we got not too many people in line, so
Might as well. So we're gonna do it.
yep, I think so. Right.
Right. That's exactly what you were going to say.
Pull up past the L line to wait for your food?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What?
I was right.
Yep.
Again.
Yep. 22. 5. 100. 20. 20s. 100. All right. Thanks.
Have a good one.
Oh, shit. Missed it by like a second.
That was close. I'll check to see if it's right.
Yeah, nope. It's too fast. you take big flights.
And slow and steady wins the race.
That's what I always say.
Is slow and steady wins the race.
I need to get a lottery ticket.
That one's a Dino, Zuzu, and the one's of Dino.
He's closed.
They're closed.
Says I'll be back in 10 minutes. Well, I'm not waiting for 10 minutes. Oh, there he is. He's back. Alright. I'll be right back.
Yep, Dad's on his own on Monday. 'Cause I got a doctor's appointment Monday. So Dad's gonna have to be on his own Monday. Yep, he's on his own Monday. Got lottery tickets.
Yep. I want to get us. Hopefully, all get rich right here, right now. That we could quit work, retire, and go traveling all around the country and get like a motorhome. And we could just drive.
And
all
sell your
around.
black truck.
Yes. Definitely sell a black truck.
Because it's getting old. It's starting to get old and rusty.
Yep. They're playing cornhole.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're playing cornhole.
Yeah. Like we always play once a year at Greg's.
Right. Correct.